Everybody back to the Georgia Native Candidate Forum that we're having here in Atlanta, Georgia. And just as a reminder, I want to put a big shout out. Today is National Voter Registration Day. So if you haven't registered to vote, find a place and register. There's all kinds of organizations out there that you can work with, and you know, go to your public library if you need to, if you have to use a computer and do it online. But please, especially the indigenous people throughout the United States, find the time to register and vote. And as I have always said, voting is a way for us to protect our treaties and our sovereignty. And by participating, you are actually helping your tribe out. So with that, I want to invite everybody to the Multicultural Media Panel. And just so you know, it's brand new. We've never done it before. And I see myself in the mirror and on the screen, and I move. And then all of a sudden, I move again, and I didn't move. So if I freak you out, it's only because I haven't figured it out yet. With that, we have some amazing people here today, and so I am going to start it off with them giving an introduction to themselves, and then we'll start a conversation. Levi?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Levi Rickert with Native News Online, coming to you from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And Native News Online is one of the most read daily Native American news sites around the world, actually, but you can find us at www.nativenewsonline.net. Will tell you that I am a proud citizen of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation.
Oh, Wopila. Stephanie.
I am, at this point in time, a freelance reporter. I have, in terms of the subject matter we're considering now, I've reported in Indian country for about 20 years. For what used to be the original incarnation of Indian Country Today, and now for a variety of mainstream publications. I've also worked as in-house as an editor for a variety of publications, mostly national consumer magazines in New York City, as an in-house editor. And I actually was admonished to give a shout out to a couple of the publications that I work for right now. If anyone's interested in doing Native stories in these times, and Yes Magazine, and a new one that covers Wisconsin called The Barn Raiser, are very interested in hearing from Native journalists. So just wanted to let you know that that's out there. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I came all the way to Atlanta to see my sister from the Oglala Sioux Nation. We're right next door, so I can tease her as we go along. Yeah.
It's all in love. Patuwashte. My name is Yanajaha Lone Wolf. I am an enrolled, proud Oglala Lakota woman, and as well as Black. I'm a media personality, national community organizer, and an activist. So thank you for having me here.
Again, this is all my pleasure, and you know, I followed everybody, and I actually followed you, and I learned Indians can TikTok. No. So I mean, it's amazing what our people can do. With that, kind of what I wanted to get out there is for us to talk about national media of Indian country and the shortfalls that, you know, you as journalists and as activists and social media that we face going. And I invited Stephanie. First of all, she's a very good friend of mine. She's a friend of Indian country, and I'm in one of her books, American Apartheid. But with that, Levi, why don't we go ahead and start out a little bit with you, and then I'm going to just jump around a little bit. I want this kind of a conversation, so you can put something out there, and either the ladies can, you know, either respond, or let's just keep a dialogue going here.
Sure. And Miigwech, thank you, OJ, and to Four Directions Native Vote for even hosting this forum. We at Native News Online are very committed to ensuring that Native Americans vote. Today is National Registration Day, and we did an article about that yesterday, but we really encourage Native Americans to participate in democracy. I, for one, feel as if the American democracy is very much under attack, and I think that all of us in the media who care about this country, and I'll say this, let me tell you why I'm saying this. We are dual citizens. Those of us who have share both tribal citizenship with the American citizenship. I am a proud citizen of the Prairie Band Potawatomi Nation, but I'm also a proud citizen of the United States of America. And I vote in both nations' election process, and I'm proud of that. That it's about the democracy, and I do know this, that Native vote really has made the difference, and that's why we continue to report on it. OJ and I are going to do a series of live streams in October called on our Native Badashkwe program, and we just feel like that's an important process to really engage our Native people in voting. And so I'm proud to be here today. And Stephanie, I will pass it to you, and you can say what you want to say. And if we have questions for one another, I'm all for that. And Lone Wolf, you as well. Thank you. Miigwech.
Okay. Well, as someone who's worked in both aspects of the media that have been mentioned, mainstream media and Native media, when OJ suggested this panel, I tried to think about ways that mainstream journalists have really fallen short and why they've fallen short in terms of covering Indian country. And I went over various, stories I've done and stories I've read and so on and so forth. And I think that the causes, like very simply speaking, I'm sure there are a lot more, but very simply speaking, I think there's the relatively large amount of research that's required for mainstream journalists such as myself who are unfamiliar with not just Indian country as a whole, but the unique and very particular challenges and history and culture and legal situation and so on of any particular tribe that they happen to have to report on. And then there's also the need to appeal to a mass audience. And in a lot of cases, if they ever get around to doing a Native story, they want like a quick hit, and they want the simplest version of the story. And that's really quite impossible. I mean, you really end up with just something that skates on the surface and doesn't get into the subtleties and complexities at all. Another thing is the inertia from including previous, even very old reporting. A lot of times, if you are a mainstream reporter, you're required, you're encouraged, or even actually required to read and include some very old reporting on anything remotely like the subject you're covering. And this means that you don't have to re-report stuff that's already been fact-checked, legally vetted, and so on and so forth. But it also means that those things weigh on your story, and they may outweigh the things that you actually find right now. And then another is the lack of Native journalists on staff. And I think that the Native American Journalists Association, certainly for anyone who happens to be listening and is not familiar with them, they have for Native people a lot of really wonderful internships, job postings, apprenticeships, scholarships, all sorts of things online. And they also have, and I think that these are definitely, this is what they call it, the Media Spotlight Report. They also have a number of Media Spotlight reports on some pretty egregious reporting on Indian country, even in like current years. And since Standing Rock, I think that there's been some improvement, like a tiny incremental improvement in understanding and in the amount of reporting. But nevertheless, there are still just egregious problems and Indian country and so on. And they seem, I was impressed by the fact that they just not the least bit afraid to take even really big media outfits behind the woodshed. Not that it seems to do much good. They seem to be really incorrigible. But I think that all of those things weigh on the mainstream reporter getting anything real done in Indian country. And I think that OJ and I were talking about this at a certain point. I think when I found, first of all, I was told over and over again, we don't do Indians, or we did Indians 10 years ago, that's enough, like whatever. And it was amazing. When I finally found the native media, and that was really quite good, I found that there was a real improvisatory sense. And so you could call your editor and say, look, I'm not finding what we came out here to find, but what I'm finding is kind of like, and they would say, go for it. Just go find what actually is, rather than what we think is going to fit into the known story. And I think that has come up in a number of situations where we rolled with it, rather than trying to find what we could jam into the known story. So let me go back a little bit to the research, and this is something that should be a warning to any mainstream journalists listening in. To write anything about Indian country, you've really got to do your work. And that means hundreds, if not thousands, of pages of reading of what I would call original materials. You have to read the treaty of the people you're going to, or the peoples that you're going to. You have to read all kinds of federal and state court cases, and often not just the opinion, but the filings and so on and so forth. You have to read depositions and trials, and just go through all of it, amicus briefs, and see what people are saying at different points and how they're responding to each other, because all of that is really important and gives you a truer, on the ground view of of any kind of controversy and what's going on. Because what you may find out in talking to the state attorney general may be so far from what they're telling the court or what anybody's doing or whatever. And anyway, you got to find out. So that's just a thought about how much work is required going into any Indian story.
I would like to, Stephanie, you made some amazing points. Myself, I have to acknowledge my late mother, Juanetta Lone Wolf. She was the first Native American to work for NBC. And she used to be the PR director for Muhammad Ali. She was the woman behind the Thriller in Manila, the Rumble in the Jungle. And she did a lot of the PR work for The Longest Walk, which I was born during The Longest Walk born in DC when everyone got there. But as her being my mentor, and in organizing communities and activism, you have to bring awareness around it. And one thing that I've noticed in urban media, there was a huge void. A lot of our Native youth love hip hop. They love pop culture. They're listening to Shade 45, The Breakfast Club, Hot 97. They're watching MTV and VH1 and BET. And I felt that, especially Standing Rock Sioux Tribe, our sister tribe, invited me to help them to bring awareness around the Dakota Access Pipeline. And immediately I reached out to Natani Means and Keys IMC and Wash Day We and Florice White Bull, and I said, let's do a media run in New York City, and let's go to the Breakfast Club, let's go to Shade 45, Hot 97, Vibe Magazine, Essence Magazine, all of these various urban media outlets that our youth are also reading and watching. Let's use social media as a power tool to be able to bring awareness around who we are as Indigenous people. I think what we're seeing, and Stephanie talked about it, is what we are seeing is a re-education. A lot of times, I was the first Native American person to be on the Breakfast Club to talk about Indigenous Peoples Day. As you can see, I'm beautifully brown, melanated, Black and Native American, but my skin is very brown. And of course, I got love, but I also got judgment of, no, they should have had someone that looks exactly how I want my Native American representative to look like. And God created me this way. I was born and raised by and came out of the womb of an Ogallala woman that taught me our ways, and our teachings, and that doesn't make me less than. And so with these platforms, it was kind of like, we're still here. In the media, they really think that we are the same. We all wear feathers and buckskin, and we're not monolithic people. We come in all shades and colors, and I had to tell them, there's over 500 tribes. That means there's 500 different languages, 500 different ceremonies, over 500 different, culture, regalia, all of that. That's a lot. And they're like, what? So it's really educating, because in history books, all it shows is that our land was taken and they killed us all. Not realizing that today there's over 5 million registered and enrolled or not enrolled, but indigenous people here today in North America, and that's not even including all of Turtle Island. So in these media platforms, I think that is the biggest, for me, having to spend an hour or two with the program director or with the editor-in-chief and saying, this is why this is worthy. Because as we're talking about Black Lives Matter, we also have to talk about Native Lives Matter as well. We also have to be able, so when there is popular headlines, whether it's George Floyd or Mike Brown, we're also mentioning names like Jacob James and so many other names of those that have been murdered by police. We're amplifying those names as well and saying they matter as well. And as we're talking about, with Kaepernick taking a knee for stopping police brutality, we're like, well, you know what? The NFL also needs to go ahead and change their mascots, because that's, so I'm always trying to figure out a way of whatever the popular news is and I love what you said yesterday. You said we have to be at the table, or then we're going to be a part of the menu. We have to demand ourselves at the table, make sure we're in that room, and in whatever space that we happen to be in as indigenous people. And because if not, they won't care. We won't have those headlines. And so I guess it's the Ogallala in me, and I'm also an Aries, but I'm like, no, you're going to hear us. We matter as well. Yes.
Well, I want to comment about, being the dinner or being the menu. You have to admit, with our skin color, we would be an easier meal to cook, and it'd be really good at the end of the day. But that's not the point. Our point is we want to actually be able to be a part of that table. But thank you very, very much. That's what this is all about. We want people, our people, the citizens of Georgia, the citizens of the United States to understand we've been going through a genocide and we're still here. And we have something that most people in America don't. We have nations. We have governments within here. We have our own legal system. We have our own social service system. We look out for our people. And so it's important for us to participate because, like I said, not only treaties and sovereignties, we also have our social programs to work on for our people. Levi, you've been at this for a while. Tell us some stories. Are you a journalist or a storyteller? I mean, Lakota.
Both. Both. And I think I'm going to go back to some of the Stephanie was talking about. Constantly, I guess the battle, and I've heard Native journalists tell us that, and that's what they like they like to freelance for Native News Online and like to even come work for us, because oftentimes when they get in the corporate structure of newsrooms around America, they hit that brick wall, as Stephanie was talking about, justifying why you even have to do a story about it. And well, we did that story before, and I was on the Secretary Deb Haaland, the Interior Secretary. They've embarked on the Road to Healing tour, and I was at both locations, both stops they've had thus far. They're going to have, I think, 2 or 3 more this year yet, and I was in Anadarko, Oklahoma for the first one. Then I was here in Michigan, where I live, but 3 hours from here, just this past month. And what I saw was in Anadarko, the first Road to Healing tour stop, there was a lot of media there. I want to say it was like maybe a quarter of that in Michigan. And Stephanie can probably get attest to this. What happens in the national media, and Lone Wolf would also agree, they go for that shiny object. Indian boarding school is a hot subject. And so they'll go for the shiny object. The beautiful thing about Native News Online and Indian Country Today and even Indians.com is we stick around. We will stick with the story. Native News Online has done over 150 stories about Indian boarding schools in the last 15 months. I'm really proud of that work, and I don't say that without any arrogance, but the fact of the matter remains, we are very committed as Native people, as a Potawatomi man, however you want to say it. I am really proud of the work we do, and that's why this candidates forum, the voting is just so critical that our people hear it from the journalists that they need to be engaged in elections. And you have the people like Amanda, what's her name? OJ, help me out. She did the voting by horses out in Navajo Nation last time. And
Ellie Young.
Allie Young, yep, not Amanda, I apologize. Allie Young, and I've interviewed her before, and her name escaped me, but that type of thing, and what you're doing, OJ, is just so critical to get our people engaged, because you and I both know, people of our generation, they didn't always want to participate in the American system. The younger crowd, the TikTok crowd, if you say it that way, they're more apt to vote, because we have some 20-year-olds on our staff, and they're basically, what are you talking about? They're proud to vote. And so, and we still get I get some emails like, well, how can you participate in that white man's election, blah, blah, blah. Well, I don't see it that way. As I said earlier, I'm a dual citizen, proud citizen of the United States, proud citizen of my tribal nation, and that's what it's all about. But as journalists, forging ahead, making sure that our voices are heard is so critical, because what both of these women have said today is that we're sometimes so often pushed aside, and we as journalists have to really push the envelope. And we've been tracking this year at Native News Online how many times we're cited by some of the non-native Native news agencies out there, and it's about twice a week, and so we're proud of that. And I don't say that without any arrogance, because I've worked hard for the last almost 12 years now, almost a dozen years I've been doing this, pushing really hard, and I can truthfully tell you, we did our Google Analytics the first week in business, 16 people came to Native News. 16. And now I say this, it wasn't all my family, because I have a large Native family. I have a big circle of friends, so it wasn't all my friends. But and to have over 3 million people coming to Native News Online, I just want to say that it's been through hard work. But one thing I will say this, as a journalist, you have to be very consistent with it. You can't start something and then not do it. When we committed ourselves to doing stories on Indian boarding schools, as we're committed ourselves to do stories about voting, we're in. We've done 3 stories just this past weekend, or since the weekend, about voting, and it says native vote right at the top of the story, and we're going to be committed until the election, because we know it makes a difference who gets elected in the United States. Deb Haaland, 2018, first time she and Sharice Davis, two Native women, ever became members of Congress. I think it was 116 Congresses it took to get two Native women there. Deb Haaland, because Joe Biden chose her to be Secretary of the Interior, she, in a sense, you could argue she springboarded from being a member of Congress to Secretary of the Interior. And I can tell you without a doubt, the 53 previous secretaries of the Interior, they did not have the federal Indian boarding school initiative that Deb Haaland decisively made that decision to establish that 2 weeks after Camp Loops was announced in late May. She went to the National Congress of American Indians by mid-June in 2021 and said, we will have this. We will go investigate what happened here in the United States when it comes to Indian boarding schools. Just the last week, with the removal of over 600 federally or places, geographic places in the United States, removing the S word from that word from their name. So tell me why it makes a difference to go vote. Deb Haaland is probably the primary example we can use. And so I'm really excited about what you're doing, OJ. I keep saying that, but I can't overly emphasize the importance of voting and voting with our feet, getting to the polls. However you vote, make sure you vote.
Thank you.
I'm gonna pass it off to whoever. Lone Wolf, what about you? What do you say about that?
I'm going to jump in real quick because I want to say something about Deb Haaland. You know, when I see her, I respectfully call her Madam Secretary. Yeah. Look at her as a cabinet member, but when I'm home, I call her Auntie Deb.
That's beautiful.
And that's a great point, that Deb Haaland is a reason why it's important that we vote. We need to see more of ourselves in these positions. I cried and wept. You know, she came to the Indigenous Peoples March, and oh my goodness, I was like, oh my God, you came, you know. And Sharice Davids, I was literally side by side with her in Standing Rock as we was getting tear gassed. You know, she was a water protector, as I was as well, and many others that was up there. You know, we need that fearlessness, and it's in us. That's who we are, and there are two great examples of that. So for everyone that's out there tuning in, it's important to vote. I'm an Aimster baby. I come from that militant, you know, freedom fighting, you know, family, you know, and they're like, oh, you all know, everyone knows about the Aimsters, you know, the Aimster gangsters, you know, in regards to, like, you know, the establishment, don't vote and things like that. But the more that I'm maturing in activism, the more that I'm seeing that we need these alliances, and they represent who we are. And if we're not voting who represents or pushing leaders, water protectors like Sharice, you know, into these positions that represent who we are, then what are we doing? And in activism, it means to activate someone for change. What are we doing? So we have to be able, the same way that we do it in our tribal government and pushing our presidents and council members that are representing who we are, we have to do that on a federal level, on a state level. Here in Atlanta, Georgia, I realized how important it is to have friendships of all walks of life in order for these cities to acknowledge Indigenous Peoples Day. Here it was, all of these years, they have been celebrating Christopher Columbus Day. And I'm like, what? You know, and so myself and Joey Jordan and other local Native Americans, we went to the city of Atlanta, the city of South Fulton, Gwinnett County, and said, hey, why do you all have Christopher Columbus Day? Let's change this. And they said, yes, let's do this. And seeing that progressiveness because of people voting for people that represent their values, and them saying, you know what, let's do more in Gwinnett County, they said. Let's do more in the city of Atlanta. Let's acknowledge more Indigenous people. I didn't even know that you all were here. That was some of the feedback we was getting. And it was like, oh my God, you know, you have the beautiful state recognized recognize Creek Nation that is here, the Cherokees that is here, the Muskogee, they're here. And I was explaining to them, we're still here. We haven't went anywhere. You thought you took us out with a Trail of Tears, but we are still here as Indigenous people, or the Indian Removal Act, and we're migrating here. Like myself, I migrated here in 2014, and so there's so many people that are coming to the state of Georgia, and they are wanting to be able to see representation and their voices. So it's important that we vote for people that also recognize Indigenous rights, Indigenous human rights, and that we're not left out the conversation when it comes down to who we are. Because one of the biggest things, and I know you felt this too, OJ, was when we pushed the 2020 voting, we pushed for Native people to vote, Indigenous people to vote. And when we saw on all the media platforms, since this is the media panel, we saw on all the media platforms, and it said Black, white, Latino, something else. And we was like, oh my God, here we are. We pushed to vote, to have a voice, to be represented. And they say it's something else. But I just want to encourage Indian country, we have to continue to fight for our representation and that we're still here.
Well, and let me just chime in. OJ is something else.
And nobody's going to argue with you.
He's something else, but he also is a proud citizen of the Rosebud Sioux tribe, so he is something else.
Oh, shoot. Well, thank you, Levi.
You got him blushing over here.
I'm trying to say, we came to Atlanta because CNN's here, and we want to show them that something else showed up. So
I think we're going to go protest after this. We're going to the CNN building.
Yeah. All right. I wish I could be there.
Yeah. I just wanted to need to wrap up, but I want to bring Stephanie back in. She's probably going something else.
All I wanted to do was just throw in very briefly that all of this effort to be at the table and to vote and so on and so forth isn't like a sort of vague, distant hope that it'll occur, that something will occur or whatever. In the last article that I did about Native American voting, which I called something along the lines of the deciders, according to the census, Native American, Alaska Native, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander peoples in the United States add up to 10 million people. And that's a really big group of people. And it's not only a really big group, but it's also grouped in a number of states, which just happen to be almost all those, what do they call them? Sort of the purple states.
Battleground states, yes.
Yeah, the battleground states. They happen to be mostly grouped in battleground states. So when they decide to vote, it's not like maybe it'll matter, maybe it won't. It really matters. The difference, yes. Because they're a huge margin. And that's something that people can't forget, that this isn't just sort of something that they should do because it's a civic duty or something like that. They can actually right now make a difference this very minute, the second they cast their ballot. So anyway, that was all I was going to say.
Well, when I had the candidates on, I gave them a 5-minute closing. And so I guess what I would like for you all to do is give yourself up to 5 minutes, and we'll start with you. And let's talk about, what you're doing, what you want to do, what you want to see. And then I want you to direct people to how to find you online, and so that we can, we need to get information out there, and we need to have people be able to reach out to reliable people to move on and to give them, to inspire them. So.
Thank you. I I'm just here to serve the people. I have been working locally very hard to get Indigenous Peoples Day statewide, as well as more representation, and to be at the table of the council and other, not just on the political realm, but also with various businesses, with education and diversity, and to try to get more Indigenous people in job placements within the media realm as well. Yesterday, a friend of mine just got a job at the New York Times, and she is Indigenous. So I just, it's those type of things that is just so important that we do. And then, so everyone could reach out to me. I know it's your Nashaha. It's Dene, the Navajo language. It means squash blossom. And so I got a Dene name, but it's YONASDA. It looks like Yonazda. So you could put queenyonajaha.com. If you Google me, don't believe all the lies. No, I'm just but it's queenyonajaha.com. You could contact me. And also on the third Sunday of every month, I do a day healing retreat where I bring in, invite Indigenous people to come in, and we do healing sessions and really great community work called Revolutionary Healing. So yeah, that's how you could contact me. And thank you again for having me. The work that you're doing is amazing. And so it really means a lot. I've been having fun with OJ over here for the past day, since yesterday. And it's an honor to meet both of you all and to see you in person. I know I've submitted some things to nativenewsonline.net for some of the events, press releases that I have sent to you before, and you all have posted it. So thank you so much, Levi. And it's amazing to finally see you face to face, or camera to camera.
Yes.
Well, first of all, it's really an honor for you to be here. And when you have to travel to Atlanta to find an Oglala, I mean, come on, give me a break. But
I wish you all brought some Wojapi, though. I've been missing that.
Well, and here's something you brought up. You migrated in here. We know there's 250 plus tribal members that represent 250 plus tribes within Georgia, and probably within even Atlanta. And so what you're talking about here is the fact that our people are still nomads. We still travel. We have tribe, and when we did these forums and we asked for tribal leaders to come in here and sit, and they may have been from Wisconsin, they may have been from, we had the councilman from Montana, Fort Belknap, Councilman King, and we sat them by the candidates. And that was so we could send a message to all of our brothers and sisters, not just one tribe, because we're not one tribe. We are 574 nations plus. And so when we take this and do these forums and put our people next to them, first it shows that our people are important. Second, it shows that there are Indians throughout the United States. And really it gives that candidate some type of credence or giving him, that candidate, not just him, but that candidate, some leeway in Indian country where they're going to listen to him, where more times than not they wouldn't. But now he's sitting by natives, and so they go, hey, if a native's there, let's see what he has to say or she has to say. So with that, Stephanie.
Oh, well, what I would like to do is relay a request from Seraphine Warren, who is a Navajo woman walking from Arizona to Washington, D.C., and she is hoping that journalists will help her bring attention to the nationwide crisis that's been mentioned many times in these 2 days of murdered and missing Indigenous people, in particular her aunt, who has been missing for more than a year. And to arrange if anyone wants to arrange an interview with her on the road or after she arrives in DC, which I understand is going to be approximately October 12th or 13th, you can message her via her Facebook page, which is called Trailing LMA, ELLAMAE. And I think that she wants to talk to Deb Holland, Madam Secretary, when she arrives, so maybe you can cover that. So that's how I'd like to close.
But I still want to know what your blog post and where to find that at.
Oh, yes. It's not really a blog. I don't get up in the morning and tell people what I had for breakfast. I have a story archive called, what's it called? stephaniewoodard.blogspot.com. And it's just a story archive of many of my stories. I mean, there were probably about 400 in Indian country altogether, but this is a lot of them. And photographs and so on and so forth.
Well, and again, as a friend, I really want to thank you for showing up, and more importantly, as a friend to Indian country, for taking the time and telling, you know, what we have to go through in order to make news. And one more thing I want to say before I throw it over to Rick is the fact that the stories you have done isn't one of which is all glitter, that you have shown over and over that we are resilient. Your stories show that we fight and that we win. So I really appreciate that. Now we're gonna go to something else, Rick. I waited.
Touche. No, OJ, again, thank you for allowing Native News Online to be part of this today. Native News Online, we report what's going on in Indian country. Those stories that oftentimes are overlooked by mainstream media. And you can find us at www.nativenewsonline.net. We have a Facebook page, a Twitter page, Instagram. We're trying to get up to the current times. We can get on TikTok. I have some 20-year-olds really pushing me hard, and so we're going to get on TikTok soon. But there again, we've been covering a variety of issues: the missing and murdered Indigenous people. We have been covering the Indian boarding school issue. We will be covering from here until the election results are known. What's going on with the midterm elections. And I can't emphasize enough the importance of Native people voting. And Stephanie said it best, I think, when she mentioned how oftentimes we're right there at those battleground states. You could probably argue if the Navajo Nation, the Tohono O'odham did not vote at such high rates for Joe Biden, he would not be president today, because he helped those votes helped carry Arizona in the Electoral College. They got those votes. Same thing in Wisconsin with Menominee Nation. I saw reports of somebody who's in my tribe who absolutely part Menominee plus Prairie Band Potawatomi. He's an attorney, and they did a study that the Menominee voted at like 79-80% for Joe Biden. Joe Biden probably is president of the United States because of that, the tipping point, the difference that Native people made in the last presidential election, and we can still make that mark. We got a hot race. I think it's gonna be a hot race because a lot of people think she's gonna be short term, but here's Mary Patello, first Alaska Native, just was sworn in last week, Tuesday night, and she beat the former GOP vice presidential nominee, Sarah Palin. And they have a very unique way of things with rankings, and the Republicans are very angry. And I know that Forward Directions is nonpartisan, but I'm just going to put it for Native News Online. I endorse Mary Patello. I want to see her get reelected. First time ever. And something that really struck me when I talked to her, and it's so interesting, she brought a Native perspective. I asked the question of why she voted, about the fact that she is pro-choice. And she said, Levi, and I'll put it in my words, I may not get them word by word, but basically, in essence, what she said, she measures her decision by, she remembers that Alaska Native and American Indian women were sterilized in the United States without their knowledge and even consent. And she uses that as a basis of that. She feels that a woman has a right to choose, and the atrocity that took place where thousands of Native women were sterilized in the 1970s, I think even into the 1980s. It's documented. People who don't believe me, they can Google that. It's documented. But that is the basis of how Mary Patello operates in Congress now, and I'm so happy she's there. Native people We encourage you to get out and vote, and I'm going to turn it back to OJ. OJ, thank Amigwich, Chimigwich for allowing me to be part of this.
As usual, Levi, it's always an honor to have you, and I enjoy listening to you. I learn a lot of things from you. So with that, in closing, Wopila, thank you, everyone. And again, today is National Voter Registration Day throughout the United States. We all encourage you to go out there and to register to vote. And, I say now, our warriors, we don't need bows and arrows. We don't need rifles. We need a pen, a pencil. All we do is check the box, and we can win more wars like that, and help protect our sovereignty and our people doing it that way. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
All right, we're